Welcome, everybody. You are at the AIA South Carolina Procrastinators Series. This is a webinar hosted and featuring Resolute Elevator. And today we have the Resolute Elevator team, including CEO Jonathan Fox. So you may have had a chance to read his bio. I'm going to let him introduce himself. But this is, he's the owner and president of Resolute Elevator, which is a leading North Carolina-based company specializing in elevator installation, modernization, and maintenance. They have a deep-rooted background in the vertical transportation industry, and Jonathan brings a wealth of hands-on experience holding licenses in multiple states, along with a range of factory certifications that reflect his technical mastery. So I'm going to let him go into that, and we will accept questions in the box. We can address those as they come up if you like, and maybe leave a little room at the end. Welcome, Jonathan. Thanks for being here.
Yes, ma'am. I really, really appreciate y'all all taking the time out of your day to let us come and present and talk about the modular elevator system. So I founded this little company about 10 years ago, literally out of my garage. My background is being an elevator mechanic first and foremost, and then a business owner second. So started out in the trade, working for many of the major companies before, again, founding this company about 10 years ago, and then was smart enough to add in some fantastic people to our group who are also on this call who will be helping to discuss the features of the modular elevator system, along with the benefits to your construction projects. But with that, I'll hand over to a couple more of our team, let them introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Heather Pate. I am the sales manager here at Resolute Elevator. We're excited to discuss the modular elevator and Resolute Elevator with you guys today, and thank you guys for joining. You're muted, Michael.
My apologies. I probably sound better muted. My name is Michael Boberg. I'm the Special Projects Coordinator for Resolute Elevator, and glad to be on this call today.
I'll pull up the presentation for us so we can get started.
So to start out with, guys, we're just going to kind of show a little video that a picture's worth 1,000 words, that just really outlines the basic process and the speed of it. And then we'll move into the slides and get into a little bit more detail of the product. But in short, it is a structural elevator shaft with a fire rating already applied and all of the elevator equipment installed. Then it is craned into place in your building site in a matter of minutes versus the weeks or months that it typically takes for an installation process. It does sit in a standard pit, whether that be a 4-foot or a 5-foot pit, and it is simply lowered into place onto 8 anchor bolts, and that is the typical attachment point for a building. So the reaction loads are transferred down to the pit floor or the footing, but that's the basics of it, and we'll jump into some slides as well as get through a couple of items. Again, this is Modular Elevator Systems 201. This first slide is just going through the AIA courses that we're gonna cover. This is a accredited course, so there will be continuing education credits that will go along with this. Standard copyright. So course description. So the modular elevator systems are an alternative to conventional site-built elevators. They are appropriate for both new and retrofit projects. So both in new construction, when there is typically nothing in place and we place that on a finished slab, or in retrofit where there's an existing building and we're adding the elevator either to the interior of the building or the exterior of the building. Upon completion of this 1-hour course, we will all understand the components of the modular elevator system, how the modular elevators impact project safety, scheduling, quality, and cost. So a couple of learning objectives we're going to go under is understand the construction of the modular elevator system, all of the different components, the elevator components that are actually utilized as part of this system, whether that be the means of conveyance and the modular shaft itself. Talk about the differences between non-proprietary and proprietary equipment. It's becoming extremely important to a lot of these different building owners who are now keeping these properties for a longer period of time. Evaluate design coordination and the ease of incorporating a modular elevator into the project, as well as do some comparison of the modular versus a conventional elevator construction. So what exactly is a modular in a nutshell? So as I discussed earlier, is a structural shaft, the cab or the box, if you will, that we ride in, and then the means of conveyance are the three major components that make up this modular elevator system. So the structural shaft. So each one of our shafts are engineered to site conditions. We are a licensed engineering firm as far as have a structural engineer on the staff who will assist with designing the structural elevator shaft for each of the job conditions. So things like wind, seismic, all those other aspects of it are engineered as part of it, and that's specific from project to project. They're constructed of 4x4 steel tubing, typically. They are typically self-supporting up to 4 stories or so, and then from there, we typically will have some lateral support to the building. Michael, do you have anything more on this?
I would just mention that as with all off-site construction, the rated wall and roof ceiling assemblies are inspected and labeled as compliant by NTA, which is essentially an inspection arm of the ICC, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. There's an inspector in our facility multiple days a week. That labeling process is compliant with all 50 states.
Thank you, Michael. So that's extremely important. So each one of these elevator shafts leaves our facility certified for fire rating from grade 0 all the way to the top. So it's completely encapsulated for fire rating prior to leaving. So the cab. Cab is obviously a fundamental part of the elevator that the public sees. We have just a ton of different options from standard horizontal or vertical raised panels, able to pick out items such as stainless steel, laminate colors, different finishes. All of those things can be designed and customized to the building owner's specifications. One of the interesting portions of this slide is it actually shows in our facility these cabs physically laid over as we're doing final wiring on these cabs. If you'll notice that all of the elevator equipment is installed in a controlled environment. So unlike a typical job site where all these finished materials are shipped to the job site, usually well ahead of it being time and then dealing with the dust, mud, debris, other issues that happen on a job site, everything stays within a controlled environment, leading to a much better finished product and not having to deal with issues with damage that can occur during the construction process. It also allows our QC level to be unlike anything else, with the ability to simply walk around these cabs versus them being installed into a elevator shaft that has walls on 4 sides of it. So it just makes a large difference. Again, me being an elevator guy first, the ability to do this allows for our ultimate goal of a perfect product for our end customer. So the means of conveyance. And so there's basically two different types of conveyance systems that are in use. That includes obviously hydraulic, which is a piston and a pumping unit that move hydraulic fluid that move the elevator up and down, as well as traction. Traction is more of what we see in the movies. So cables are typically there for taller buildings, higher use buildings, or greater speeds. Both of these applications can be done in both machine room or machine room-less applications, and and we can help out throughout the design process of when it makes sense for one over the other product line. So proprietary versus non-proprietary. This is something that's extremely important to me, especially from the elevator standpoint of it. And so a lot of the major OEMs are extremely proprietary, wanting to maintain that revenue stream of service in the future. They are getting to the point that they're so proprietary that it is difficult for anybody to work on, much less their own folks. Most of these contracts talk about that anything that is deemed proprietary, such as software or otherwise, if they are not selected for service, they have the right to remove. And this leads to a lot of issues, and basically having to stay with the installer for service for the long term of that elevator's lifespan. Obviously, that's where a lot of these higher costs for cost of ownership come in versus the non-proprietary is open sourced. Most of these companies are all US based as well, making parts and materials a lot easier to obtain. And more importantly, everything from manuals, tech support, training is open to any certified elevator contractor, allowing for the building owners to truly own that piece of equipment that they've purchased and put that service contract out to bid year over year if they deem so. It's just something that's become extremely important now that building owners are keeping these properties for longer periods of time. When there was situations where building owners or developers were building the properties and then reselling them in short periods of time, this wasn't as big of a concern. But we're seeing that come up a lot more of being asked, hey, we want to be sure we're using non-proprietary equipment. So design coordination. A lot of times this has become difficult with each elevator vendor needs different requirements from the building system side. And it's extremely important with the design of the modular elevator to simplify that coordination throughout the process. Now that I get to control the hoistway, control a lot of the other systems that are involved, such as pit light, pit ladder, rail supports, machine beam supports. Now all that is coordinated with our tower, making this design coordination a lot simpler. It really streamlines that process all the way through. Most of our designs have now been placed into BIM or Revit to be able to share, to easily allow to use these systems in your projects or drop into your plans, as well as we have extremely detailed work by others, even though it's vastly simplified on what is needed. We've done things such as include the disconnecting means, shunt trip breaker, cellular dialers, all these different aspects to make this coordination a lot simpler. Again, we're supposed to be the elevator experts and assist throughout that design coordination. This is a big portion of what Michael does on the team, so I'll let him speak more to this.
Sure. So basically, one of the advantages to a modular elevator system is the predictability, as Jonathan had just spoken to. So for instance, we provide 4 standard sizes, 2,100 pound, ranging up to 4,500 pound capacities. And those length and width dimensions never change per capacity size. So being able to provide the DWG or RVT files or full model for incorporation on the design side really expedites that whole process. And one thing I wanted to point out, because we do encounter some some kind of predictable questions during these conversations, so I head off a few of them here. That, as Jonathan mentioned way back at the beginning slide, so the structural steel shaft with the rated wall and roof ceiling assemblies entirely replaces your conventional CMU shaft. And as he mentioned, the towers are designed largely to be self-supporting. We typically don't rely on a building to support the tower as much as there's tiebacks for coordinated movement of the surrounding structure with the shaft. So even when it comes to that level of design coordination, the advantages of having design staff on board. We do quite a bit of design coordination, can speak that language, and are more than comfortable working through that process. So, trying to standardize it as much as possible, not just from a architectural design side, but to make the modular system, which is complete and everything is already installed, an elevator in a box, right? That to make it for the associated MEP systems as close to a plug and play application as possible. And of course, during the design and development of the products, uh, constantly with an eye towards keeping up with any code changes, differences in code from state to state, or even, for instance, in South Carolina, as it may vary from the coast to the western portions of the state. So even those considerations are taken into the design, and typically, instead of having a good, better, best scenario, we're going with the more stringent requirement across the board. So again, providing that level of flexibility or the level of consistency so that it's more predictable, I should say.
Thank you, Michael. So, that was a great point Michael brought up. The biggest thing is all of these different elevator systems have been pre-engineered and pre-designed, from those standard 21 that we're seeing a whole lot, for instance, in churches or small applications, the 25 and 35 obviously being your IBC stretcher compliant, to your 45 that we're doing a lot in storage facilities or hospital. They're a service or a hospital style car. And these capacities are more uniform across the elevator trade as far as their sizes as well. One of the things that comes up is, as well as this modular elevator system, larger or smaller than a conventional elevator, and we are actually slightly smaller because our wall construction is 6¼ inches versus an 8-inch CMU. So if you have a design with an 8-inch CMU shaft, kind of pre-sized for that elevator shaft, our system will actually again replace that CMU shaft and fit in that same location, slightly smaller than that. And again, we get, because I do this so often and I forget, things come up, but everything from the elevator equipment, the doors and entrances are pre-installed, the doors, the push buttons. A big one that's in North Carolina right now that I'm sure will follow down to South Carolina. We've adopted 2022 code, so hoistway lighting. So all of the hoistway lighting is pre-installed. Our goal is to make single point connections for the electrician, for the plumber, um, for the fire alarm, for the data, to simplify this process. As I have told people, if I could put a receptacle on the back of the thing and just plug it in, that's what we would do. We just can't quite do that just yet. So a lot of effort has gone to streamline the entire process all the way through. And again, the biggest thing is we're always available. We love to get involved in projects very, very early, and we can assist because most of these products have been completely modeled out to provide, not only on the architectural side, but also, as Michael said, on the MEP or the structural side as well. So going into the ADA and IBC, there are several different things out there, and we can go through them on a case-by-case basis. But a lot of that has to do with door sizes and capacity, and also door hands, whether it be center opening, if we're having to be stretcher compliant. There's where the push buttons need to go, where the directional lanters need to go. The biggest point of this is now that we can control the entire system, we are always meeting the requirements of the code or building specifications that are needed up front. Again, we're the elevator experts to this. Instead of pushing that off to the design teams, we like to get involved in that and assist all the way through. So let's go through some key advantages between modular and conventional. Dramatically reduced schedule. That sometimes with different products that come out are kind of tongue in cheek. As you saw in that video, yes, it was slightly sped up, but we can install 4 to 5 elevators and elevator shafts in a matter of a day or a little longer. Depends on how quickly we can move those cranes. So at the beginning of the project, where we're typically pouring a slab, and then the job sites were shut down for the CMU shafts to come vertical, and then vertical construction starts. As soon as that slab is poured, we're able to set that elevator shaft, allowing vertical construction to begin almost immediately. This is night and day from a standard practice. Things such as weather delays, all those other aspects are no longer a problem, and it's extremely controlled. That it's going to arrive on site at the right time, be set in place in a matter of minutes. We've also, because everything's pre-engineered, we streamline the submittal process. So we're able to turn around submittal drawings in a matter of hours instead of a matter of weeks. Once we have basic information such as door hands and elevations, we can kick out drawings virtually instantly. Reduced install times. So these elevators are completely not only installed, but tested in our facility in North Carolina. And so when they arrive, they've already, all the equipment has already been wired, tested, and commissioning of the elevator takes a matter of days. Most of the time, what we try to do is mobilize on a Monday and have an inspection on a Thursday. So the back end of the project, where the heat's on, and it's typically always the elevator guys that are keeping that CO, we're able to have an inspection rapidly, both providing assistance for if it's move-in or stocking permits, or just needing the CO, as the elevator is required most of the time for a CO. Weather delays, as I said, everything is controlled, so we just don't have weather delays. I don't care if it's snowing, raining, hailing. Tornado might be a little bit of a problem for us, but other than that, it doesn't matter to us from the weather standpoint. Increased efficiency. So as we spoke to, the equipment is pre-engineered equipment, assembled in a controlled environment. Efficient use of construction materials. So we have almost zero waste with our construction techniques. Allowing for decreased cost as well as impacts to the environment. Factory tested and documented QA and QC procedures. Being able to walk down an elevator shaft for QC is unlike any other experience I've ever done doing elevators on a conventional manner. I see a question come up: can elevator be used worker for during construction? That has come up a lot, and the short answer is yes. What we will typically do in that aspect is ship the elevator without the cab interior in it, so it'll just be the steel shell, and then there is some inspections that has to happen in order for that to take place. We don't have to have life safety lab, but we have to have lighting in the lobbies, or temporary lighting in the lobbies, we have to do load test, but it's just a different permit application, and we see this used right often. Back to our QA QC procedures, I think we're up to 171 points, if I'm correct, Michael, with all the different testing that happens throughout the process.
250.
Oh, we've added some since last time. So
Added a few.
The level that we're able to do in our facility in a controlled environment is just unlike anything we've ever seen before, and really why it is my go-to way to do elevators on the new construction. I don't even want to do elevators conventionally anymore. Reduce cost and headaches. So limited exposures to change orders. I hate change orders. I think change orders typically are used as a revenue stream when people screw up on bid day. As I tell people now that I'm controlling everything, the only way we can have a change order is if the owner changes from pink to purple halfway through. There is now the delays because as an elevator guy, we mobilize and we're waiting on a block mason or electrician. All those things go away with this aspect. Michael, can elevator shaft be relied on for lateral stability? I'm assuming you were talking about shear load. Michael, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure, it's probably easier to answer that question this way. So the structural steel shaft is typically much stronger than any of the surrounding construction. So it's very good at vertical loading, floor loading, roof loads. The one thing, and we've seen a lot of very interesting things. We've seen fully cantilevered stairs all the way around it, freestanding, etc. So it's great in those conditions. Have not encountered any instance where we were carrying some of the building load where the structure essentially had to change substantially. We have had some interesting scenarios where we have retrofitted to a pier that involves some an actual pier on the ocean that involves some interesting tiebacks. But to be a little more succinct, to answer your question, the shaft will carry all kinds of loads except for shear loading. That's where Jonathan was going with that. So, in a condition where the design is relying on the stair tower and the CMU elevator shaft for shear, we would reach a point of diminishing return pretty quickly.
Thank you, Michael. And what we have found anytime this has come up is there's just so many other ways to get shear out of a building. Actually, Nate Henson's our structural engineer, and one of the points he made is that typically, especially on a simplex, the elevator shaft is not a good point to gain shear since it's so small in relation to the stair towers. Like you said, there's so many other ways to gain shear support for that building. So it was one of those ways we had to find a place where our delegated design ended and the building picked back up. And that was where Nate Henson, our structural engineer, became where he wanted to stop at. But again, carrying vertical loads are no problem at all. We do that actually quite often. And that's part of that design coordination, whether it be a clip or a beam support or a column, anything along those lines, we can assist with carrying those loads relatively easily and very little impact to the structural tower, again, because everything's being transferred down to that pit floor. Hope that answered your question. So controlled cost. As we continue in the U.S. to be dealing with all the ups and downs of the political world or of COVID or everything else, one of the benefits to the product is that we lock in those costs very, very early into the project. So not worried about cost escalations, not worried about materials escalations or shortages, right? So we're able to have controlled costs early into the project, and the elevator being something that gets checked off the list very, very early. Reduced on-site disruptions. Like or not, elevator guys can be a pain on job sites. We bring a ton of equipment. It has to be, a lot of times it gets delivered early. It has to be stored. It's in very large containers. With this product, it's already done. We don't have to worry about laydown. We don't have to worry about disruptions from the elevator standpoint at all. The most disruptive thing we do is physically setting it, from setup of the cranes. Again, it typically takes longer to build the cranes than it does to set it. Our average time on the hook is about 15 minutes, and then we're packed up and we're leaving. Most of the time on the projects that we've done over and over again, the superintendents and the project managers don't even get out of the truck anymore when we show up. So we're there and we're gone. We do coordinate throughout the project. I love site meetings to ensure that even with the limited scope of work that does take place by others, that we work closely with our partners on site. So as framing goes up, we'll come out and have a meeting when it's time for electrical rough ends. We'll have a meeting, fire alarm, everything else, so that when it's physically time to have that inspection, it happens without a hitch. I am proud of the team at Resolute. We do not fail inspections. We pass the first time every time, and that is through not only the product but the work of our project management team. I talked a little bit already on no weather delays, assigned project management teams, but the most important thing is just talk about safety and reduce risk of accidents. It is amazing to me the skill and courage that block masons have on getting on some of that scaffolding. Again, all of that goes away. Installing elevators is inherently dangerous. It's in a vertical shaft. With it being done off-site in the horizontal means, we never have anybody on any kind of height concerns. When the elevator is shipped, we basically have a running platform at that point in time. Barricades, all of those other aspects of that open shaft throughout the construction period now will all go away. The doors and entrances are all installed and locked, just as it's going to be for that final end user. I have to put this one on there because we get asked all the time. It replaces the CMU shaft. There's no requirement for additional fire rating or structure for this elevator. What am I missing, Michael?
Some of this information is a bit anecdotal, but it is consistent feedback, and I think this would hold true for most modular construction. It certainly holds true for what we have going on. So when we talk about increased speed and efficiency, typical feedback we get, and it depends on the type of construction, location, number of elevators, etc. But the typical feedback is that at a minimum, we're shaving about 30 days off of the construction schedule. And as it applies to the design side, because it's all spelled out and predictable for us, we're not having to go back, go through engineering from a manufacturer's side, wait on somebody that's waiting on somebody else. The actual design coordination to incorporate a modular elevator is also faster and more efficient, more predictable. And what we see oftentimes, it depends on the project again or the project types. But once I'll answer your question in 1 second there, Robert. So once the architectural staff or design team across the board is used to the system, it's just the way they go. It just seems to be easier. And like I said, I realize that's a bit anecdotal, but that has been our experience. So Robert's asked how many systems are in place and how long is the oldest. Jonathan, you can answer the oldest. I'm not sure how many hundreds of systems are in place throughout North Carolina, South Carolina. We're now in Georgia and actually have our first set in Northern Virginia, just south of DC, for a large national construction firm that is incorporating the design into their corporate office in Falls Church, Virginia. And those are 9 and 10 stop units. So I'll let Jonathan answer. What do you think your oldest unit is, Jonathan?
Be nearly 8 years old now. That'd be the first ones we did at Revolution Mills. Revolution Mills was a neat project and another good example of once both a designer or an owner or a contractor uses the product, it's just the way that they do it every single time. But Revolution Mills was actually my first elevator that we did back in there in the other corner. Revolution Mills is an old mill that was doing one building at a time. They did that one, and then there's a 5-story building that we added additional elevators in, 3 of them, and they called us back to install those 3. I guess that was 3 years ago, so 5 years 5 years later. The number of units we are installing somewhere in the range of 60 to 75 per year, and that continues to grow. Our growth strategy has been completely really word of mouth. Items such as today. So I really do want to thank everybody for taking their time. We don't have a massive marketing budget. We're trying to grow this the correct way. And so everything has been repeat customers or one at a time, meeting somebody or having somebody come out and come watch one go in, and doing that 50, 60, 70 times a year. The Georgia project that we're doing was interesting in that we had done some work with this developer in North Carolina. I got a phone call about a project in Georgia and said, well, we're just not interested in that yet. But at any rate, they said, well, you have to. You're already in the plans. So that's been our growth, if you will, is through that aspect of it. Another question. Go ahead,
Jonathan. Before you move on, I wanted to interject here. So we do have a couple of questions, but before I wanted to provide some additional information that may be leading to some of these questions about how many systems in place, how long, what's the oldest system. So one thing we should speak to is that this elevator equipment, first and foremost, there's no such thing as an elevator company, whether it's the major companies that are easily recognized or Resolute Elevator. We all buy our parts and pieces from the same place. I'm not going to get into which parts and pieces we share with the major industry, but these parts and pieces are exactly the same as any other elevator that goes in. So there's nothing that's different really, other than the assembly method and the installation method. When we speak to proprietary versus non-proprietary, largely, especially now in the modern world, that when the only thing that's proprietary in any elevator is the software and the controller. That it used to be a little more complex than that, but it really boils down to the software and the controller. So outside of that, these companies have been in business. The company that we purchase our hydraulic jacks from, pumping units, power units, etc., has been in business for almost maybe a little over 100 years. Cab manufacturer is one of the largest in the country. So just want to make sure that is clear, that there's nothing about this that is out of the ordinary. And other than there seems to be a race to the bottom on quality, we are not interested in that, not even a little bit. So I just wanted to follow that up, kind of double down on an answer to Robert's question. And then real quick, Andrew had another question about preferring certain types of building structures, i.e. steel versus mass timber. So the building structure doesn't really affect us because we're entirely in control of the shaft. So for instance, to give you some examples, we do a lot of commercial construction, so steel, concrete. We do a lot of residential construction where it might be typical framing. We're in development now with a prototype for a mass timber structure that the client is interested in using across the country. We just set a multi-piece tower here in North Carolina last week that was set into a podium. So it really, back to what Jonathan had mentioned earlier, that it really is about the design coordination, but the information doesn't really change, unless we get above a certain height, and we need to coordinate movement of the shaft with the building, or we're carrying, some lateral loads, or vertical loads, excuse me. The last thing, Nick had asked a question about sending any of these out of the country, for example, Canada. So it's not for lack of the request. We have some interesting requests. People say, hey, come to the Virgin Islands, come here, come there, and we just, it's not really, we're not interested in uh, selling something, ship it to you, and say, here you go. Right? This is a end-to-end process. So until we get big enough to operate in Canada, we're going to stay in the United States right now. So thank you, Jonathan. I just wanted to answer those questions before we ran out of time.
Yeah, that's perfect and great points there, Michael. I hope we've answered a bunch of questions and tried to head off some of them. So a big one that comes up is brass tacks cost, right? And so that's important. It's important as architects to be steward of the developer's money. And so we have had several cost analysis done that really try to wrap up the true cost of the elevator and the elevator equipment. In short, what we are seeing is hard cost to hard cost of the elevator shaft, replacing the CMU, cost of the elevator equipment, or somewhere around 10% greater than hard cost to hard cost. But where it really continues to push us in the direction of making massive gains is in that time savings. So savings of everything from general conditions, savings of interest carry, builder's risk insurance, all of those aspects. And so we've had some cost analysis done by different folks. We had Lysick and Associates in North Carolina do one, and I'm sure Heather would be happy to share that. But it was $100,000 less expensive, or greater than $100,000 less expensive, when taking into account some of these cost comparisons. It was such a difference to me. I was kind of blown away from it, and just truly didn't have any idea on what the true cost of each additional day on a construction site is. And so that's a big portion, and we can discuss that further. So in conclusion, this comes up a lot. It's a little bit strange, guys, doing these when a lot of times when we do these lunch learns, there's so much feedback that's happening nonstop. So I'm trying to remember some of these questions that come up, so I apologize. But we get asked a ton on when we do duplex or group cars. This is a great example of a duplex installation. And in short, what we do is we set one elevator shaft beside the next. We do continuous fire rating of each shaft. It's funny, we're seeing that more and more, especially in the NAFAC specs or other things where they want those separations between elevator shafts. And it didn't make any sense to try to figure out how to have a continuous fire rating with such a large joint by doing where basically there's not that fire rating between each elevator shaft. But that is something we do quite often, and it's fairly simple to do. That project we're doing for HIT construction in DC is 5 cars in a bank. So that was where I was going with it, Ms. Andrew. The next question always is how tall can we go? And so we have obviously that gets into the traction space. The cars that are going to DC, 4 of them are nonstop, one is 10 stop, and they're 137 foot of travel. In short, that's exactly what we do is stack pieces. We're able to do that continuous fire rating with our engineering judgment on how we connect the 2 tower sections. And in theory, we can continue stacking. At some point in time, the elevator shafts become such a core of that building where it doesn't make sense to. But what is that top travel height yet? And in short, we haven't found it yet. So, car speeds up to 350 foot a minute or beyond. Again, because the elevator equipment is not what is revolutionary here, we can continue to push that into higher and higher heights. Any other questions, guys, before I conclude?
So Jonathan, I do have a one more thing to add. Well, Andrew just asked another question about have we encountered states that require an elevator machine room? So, Resolute Elevator is a non-union shop, so we will not likely be working in Massachusetts anytime soon. However, another way to answer that question, Andrew, is that there are some pretty serious losses in efficiency and additional cost by designing with a machine room. There are some creative ways, if it's more about a fit and finish or an aesthetic issue, having a controller located elsewhere, that's certainly doable. We don't recommend a machine room. It creates, unless it's required by code, it just creates additional space that you could use, use for other things in the building. And custom size elevators for historic buildings. Jonathan, do you want to speak to that?
So in theory, anything's possible, right? To do to customize the elevator shafts to be smaller. The biggest thing in the world is we have standardized lead times, and so it just falls into a different lead time scenario. I hope that answers your question, but it's the same thing with cab interiors. So we've pre-designed these cab interiors, again, to capture about 5 different panel layouts with 30 different laminate choices. However, anything is possible. It just adds additional layer to the lead time. And so that's the best way to answer that is anything is possible with this elevator shaft because it's at the end of the day just structural tube steel. It just will add to the lead time aspects of it and bring in some kind of customability to that. But that would be the same thing regardless of the elevator system that we were looking at is when we start to get into these custom aspects of it. And then just lastly on the machine room list, we have done modulars right often, or not right often. I'd say 10 to 15 times where they did do a machine room. The biggest driver for machine room versus machine roomless application is typically on a project that's requiring non-proprietary. There just wasn't that many non-proprietary systems that were machine roomless, and that's typically what drives that. The other aspect to machine roomless is when it is in a conventional elevator, it is very, very difficult to do machine roomless in that coordination aspect of it. Whereas with because we are controlling the hoistway, the machine roomless applications get so much simpler for the building system side. In a typical MRL or typical conventional construction, you have to have power to install the elevator, but you have to have the elevator in order to install the power at the top of the shaft, for example. So those coordination aspects just get a lot more complicated in the machine roomless, and that's typically the only reasons why we are seeing a customer start out with a design around a machine room. Once we explain those aspects of it, that it is fully machine roomless, fully non-proprietary, those concerns a lot of times go away. There are different states out there. I think California is one of them that although they say, or there's the thought is no machine roomless applications. It's more about the controls aspect of it and doing some different things that are just different about that. So the controllers, instead of being built into the entrance frame, for example, they go in a closet more than it is, hey, a complete machine room for full bodily entry. So I hope that answers some of y'all's questions. And then last, guys, what I'll close with again is just really thanking everybody for taking the time. It is truly what makes my job possible and all the people that we're able to support this little company. So please let us know if there's anything we can do to help. We know that getting answers out of elevator contractors can be difficult. And so whether it's for a modular product or something y'all want to take a look at with that, or just general elevator questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to help out any way we can. All right, Heather and Michael, do y'all want to close with anything? And we'll.
Sure. Thank you guys for joining this afternoon. My contact information is listed on the screen. We certainly would love to continue the conversations with you guys, whether we do the presentation for others in your firm, or if you guys are interested. We're located in North Carolina. I know that may be far for some of you guys, but we'd certainly enjoy you guys making a trip up and checking us out as well. But thank you again, and I look forward to chatting with you guys in the future.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Resolute Elevator team. That was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for the questions, everybody, for attending. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.